Hello, everyone, and welcome to From the Field to the Bar, sponsored by 7th Regiment Performing Arts Academy. Thank you to Kevin Lowry and all the people behind the scenes who made this workshop a possibility. When our drum corps careers end, we seldom leave our days as musicians and performers behind us. This workshop aims to give young performers who enter the activity as members of the horn line or drumline the vocabulary and tools to help them explore movement-based performance opportunities within and beyond the marching arts. With my special guests, Dan Hoffman and Kellie Simmerly, I want to give participants a series of practical exercises or ways of thinking to link their training in the marching arts to resonances in the realm of modern and contemporary dance. We hope you leave the workshop equipped with exercises, expanded vocabularies, and advice to help foster a sustainable lifelong connection with music, movement, and other means of self-expression. So I'm going to let my guest tell you a little bit about themselves, starting with Dan.
Hello, world. My name is Dan Hoffman. I currently reside in Mesa, Arizona. I was born and raised in upstate New York and spent a couple of years living in Boston, Massachusetts as well. So that lends already a really interesting diversity to my marching arts experience, as we don't really hear about a lot of marching arts people from the Northeast or from the Southwest. To that end, I currently serve a number of roles with a number of organizations. Primarily, I'm a visual instructor with the Madison Scouts. I am a visual instructor and staff coordinator with Breakthrough Indoor Percussion, an independent world group based out of Phoenix, Arizona. And I also teach various high schools, marching bands and indoor drum lines in the Phoenix area. That's just a little bit about me. You'll find out a lot more about me shortly.
Thank you, Dan. Kellie?
Hello, everyone. I'm Kellie Simmerly. I am from Omaha, Nebraska, born and raised. Haven't done a lot of traveling other than within drum corps, but I am currently in physical therapy school, which has given me a wonderful perspective to how the body works with regards to movement. And with regards to movement, I work with several ensembles as well. I am a visual instructor for the Phantom Regiment, kind of focusing on dance and physical training. And I am also a visual instructor for Crossroads Percussion, an independent organization based out of Des Moines, Iowa. And then I work for the Millard West High School as their primary visual instructor / choreographer. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you both so much. This is wonderful. We're going to divide the sessions into smaller divisions of 3. So our first session right now is going to focus on preparing the mind and the body, talking about what dance is as both a mental and a physical sport and activity, and what dance kind of means to you. So I want to pose a question to my guests about what brought them to the marching arts. What's the marching arts like for you in terms of your movement and training? And how do you move through space now as informed by marching arts?
That's a lot of great questions. And I feel like each of us could talk for hours about this. And so I apologize in advance if I talk for a while on this. But I think the marching arts has been the most formative experience for me in terms of my ability to experience life and also to identify who I am. I feel like I was introduced to the marching arts primarily through other people willing me to do that, starting with my middle school Cub Scout peers, like saying like, oh, you have to do marching band because like my older sister does marching band and she loves it so much. I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. And then like pressure from other people led me to do it. And then I found that as I was invited into this activity, I found that there was a place for me to stay, as in all of these peers from different ages and different grades, from different experiences. I was suddenly like this petri dish of experience with other people. And as a very sort of like small town person, not having much other experiences out there, it was fascinating to be able to explore the world of music and art, and especially as they relate to movement. Marching band in high school was my first introduction to actually using my body in a meaningful, intentional way. And I think that just only amplified the natural excitement in music. So when I first saw a drum corps show my high school senior year, it became a matter of, oh, I have to do this. I have to keep doing drum corps. I have to be able to do this beyond high school. This is so meaningful to me. And so by luck, I was able to get a spot marching with the Boston Crusaders as a Contra. I was there in 2012, 2013, and 2015. And after my first summer of drum corps, that was when I was exposed to, doing choreography and doing other sort of these things that I hadn't really learned in my high school band. And so then to return to college as a sophomore, I began to start taking dance classes for the first time ever. And then what was originally begun as a way of amplifying and enhancing my knowledge of movement for marching band purposes suddenly became its own interest. I suddenly became interested in the body itself, interested in the body in space, interested in the body with other bodies in space. And this all sounds so abstract, but this is just as important for the dance studio as it is for the marching field, as it's important for just collaboration with other people in all aspects of the lives, in terms of living with people, in terms of being a classmate, yada, yada, yada. So needless to say, it's completely influenced every part of my life, to the point where now in the past year or two, I've actually started really diving into mindfulness, into spirituality and those concepts, because so much of that requires an emphasis of the body and the validation of the body's experience and the body's experience with other bodies in this world. So it's all to say that marching band has always been a way for me to explore these interests, to find out who I am, to find out what our culture is. It's all the things. So I'll leave it there for now.
That's great. Kellie, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on the body.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I kind of had a different route that got me to the marching arts. I was a dancer from a young age and did that for several years, but I actually, I went to my first drum corps show, I'm pretty sure, when I was an infant. It's my father was a fan of it, so he took me to many, many shows. But what caught my eye was always the color guard, because I was looking at it from the point of view of a dancer. So once I started band, I actually hated band, wanted to quit. I just wanted to dance, didn't want to do anything with an instrument. But once I got into high school and I actually started marching, I realized the similarities between dance and the marching arts. And it was a wonderful parallel for me that I could take the skills that I learned from dancing and apply them to marching, and ultimately get to perform and just have another version of self-expression, just through a different modality. It was phenomenal. And it's similar to what Dan said. It's just, I started getting this interest in how I'm able to move my body through time and space, and how I can apply different skills, either my marching skills to dance or dance skills to marching. And it just took me all the way through high school, into college, and also into drum corps, to where we got to do even more dancing on the field. And that was my saving grace. That was what allowed me to get a position in a drum corps, which I spent 4 years from 2015 to 2018 with the Phantom Regiment. And in my last season, I was the movement captain. So for me to have this role where I was able to step out of whatever we were doing and help clean bodies, kind of be like a transitionary educational person, because I had that dance background. So I was able to see a lot of things, understand how it felt in my body, and try and get other people to feel the same way, things that I was feeling. And it was just, dance and the marching arts together are two wonderful things that have helped me get to where I am, and have been easily the best part of my life.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I'm resonating with so much of what both of you are saying. I also kind of started as a youngin'. I started in gymnastics, actually, rhythmic gymnastics, and then the beam was very scary and I stopped doing gymnastics. So I didn't dance for a really long time until I moved into the high school marching band situation, where I was playing trombone, and I saw the color guard dancing and moving, and I brought my best friend of 15 years into the color guard, even though she had never played music before. And it was a way for us to stay connected within band as kind of a social sphere. So I ended up doing 2 years of playing the trombone and 2 years of being a drum major, because I really connected with moving with my body and articulating a beat just with my hands. And part of the reason I was able to conduct and express myself that way was because my high school rebooted the high school's winter guard my junior year, and I did winter guard in high school for 2 years in their season. And just a little novice class group learning like flats and ankles, and it was a really interesting way of thinking about the body. And I had all of this flexibility still from gymnastics, and just kind of some basic skills like doing a bridge and a handstand, and one-handed cartwheels and things like that. So I was a very jumpy, leapy dancer, but my technique was garbage. And I didn't have any turning technique, or, I called them tour jetés, and they're tour jetés, which is a jump led by one leg and you kind of spin around in the middle of it. But I had all of this excitement and energy and no technique to back it up. And then the band performance side of things actually was teaching me to project with my chest, which isn't always great for turning. So I had all of these different things kind of combining into one way of moving and thinking about movement. And I really think that's probably, the movement training is one of the reasons I was contracted, like you said, Kellie, because I was trying to play a chromatic scale, a half step down plus the first valve on a baritone, because I was a trombone player. So I wasn't the greatest valve instrumentalist. And I think movement probably was one of the reasons I got a contract with the Boston Crusaders in 2015. And then it was definitely the reason I got a contract at the Cadets in 16. And then I stayed there through 17 and 18, where we kind of moved and danced, had our skirts, had our zebra cake pants, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm thinking a lot about how rhythmic gymnastics and the use of props actually kind of changed the way that I thought about my instrument when I was dancing. Because as a horn line member, I don't know if you all experienced this, I would always get mad when we had bad horn choreo, and because the baritone's very heavy. And Dan, I'm sure you have thoughts on this as a tuba player, but I would always think about rhythmic gymnastics as a way of moving the body, but also your body is moving with whatever prop you're using. Like with a ball, your back is also moving to complement the shape of that ball. So there's a kind of ergonomic movement happening here. And just thinking about ways that our instruments work against us and work with us in the marching arts. It's a tool for making music, but it's also a visual tool. So I've thought a lot about how just returning to being 8 years old with the hula hoop has changed and shaped the way that I write choreography for 7th Regiment. Yeah, I'm sure you have thoughts as low brass players on instruments and their barriers and the kinds of styles they invite.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's something that always comes to mind, especially when I'm choreographing with my high school group, how these, because you have woodwinds then thrown in as well. So like, the vast majority of my higher level marching training was through drum corps, which is only brass. So they choreograph for these instruments that are bell forward. And then you get to high school, working with high schoolers, you have flutes, you have clarinets, you have saxophones with their neck straps, you have sousaphones. So it's really invited me to experiment with, okay, what can I get these different instruments to do in a way that makes sense for their body movement and for whatever the show calls for. Thinking of the instrument as a prop rather than just like this piece of metal in their hand, like thinking of it as an extension of their body really helps open that up and just kind of connect it all a little bit more easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially as a tuba player, like there was nothing worse than being taught choreography by someone who clearly has never held a tuba, which good for you if you haven't held a tuba, like you consider yourself lucky. But for those of us who have bravely chosen that instrument and that dedicated our life to that craft, we want something that actually fits not only with our bodies, but with our instruments as well. And I think there's a way that you can use that instrument as an opportunity to create something very interesting and exciting and engaging and to make me more curious and excited to learn about my body than a hindrance that makes it so that, okay, horns, you're all going to do this really cool choreography. Tubas, you're going to stand in the back and hold your horn at carry. Like, that sucks. And I think what this call kind of like all of our experiences here is I think we've all become teachers, at least to some degree, because we felt as though as students, we weren't necessarily heard all the time, or that our needs, our feelings weren't acknowledged, let alone addressed and, that made them the impetus of change. And so here we are as this change for this activity. I think there's an increasing number of people in our age group that are, becoming the dominating forces in the activity, which is exciting to think that, like, as young people, especially on the visual side of things, because I think as we all know, visually, this activity has evolved so much rapidly, so much and in such a different direction than the rest of the activity. So it requires people who are more aware of what's going on right now to, go back into that and to influence it with this wisdom we've just gleaned as just recent aged out performers. So I think it's fascinating that, we have a lot of experiences outside of the marching arts that have led to us a very specific perspective. Me with my college dance experience, Kellie, with your vastly anatomical knowledge of the body as it relates to physical therapy. And then Sara, I had no idea you had that rhythmic gymnastics background. So already we're unique students in the activity, but then now we've experienced what we've experienced. And so here we are trying to create and engender a new influence on the activity to get us to a better place.
Absolutely. Beautifully put. Beautifully put. Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about how being a low brass player and being a brass player in general, or a drummer, when your instrument is attached to your body, it's kind of an asset, that kind of training that you can bring into a dance class because you're used to working around something or with something. When you have to work in a choreographic situation where you have a partner or you have certain requirements where you have to move just parts of your spine, there's a kind of implicit and explicit bodily knowledge. I mean, obviously we understand different ways of thinking about the leg. If you've ever been in a marching arts ensemble, you have deconstructed every possible way that you can move your leg and create leg shape. But there's also that implicit knowledge of when I put my instrument up, when does a performance begin? When am I dancing? When I get set for the rep, when I take my -1 or when I take my +1. And there's that implicit understanding of choreography and bodily awareness. Even if you're not consciously thinking about leg shape, you're thinking about your torso and how to project and the way that that's looking because you know how it feels. So I'm thinking a lot about different ways of knowing the body, moving the body recently. And that's inspired by what you've just said, Kellie and Dan.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to a question you originally asked, which I'm just now remembering, the idea of, like, what to each of us is dance? How do we define or codify dance? And I think what we're all touching upon is, as we're talking about how we have this instrument or this object to manipulate, and that influences how we choreograph and how we move. And I think ultimately what this suggests is that, though there are all these codified techniques of dance throughout the centuries, at ballet, and the Western, in terms of Western dance, I feel it all really comes back down to, like, just acknowledging that the body does move, the body does respond. And so essentially, I think, to me, dance is just any response that the body can have. I'm often influenced by the Judson Church and the postmodern movement of dance. This is like in the 1960s, where dance became such this radical thing that, like, people would go to this old church, the Judson Church in New York City, and they would call any sort of performance a dance. You could just stand there and that's your dance. You could just walk on the stage and that's a dance. And you could read a poem and that's dance. And so I always use that as my bouncing off point for, like, what are we really trying to do here? What is the purpose of movement? Is it to be rigid about the technique and the technical precision about this one move or this one shape? Or is it really about honoring our bodies in space and all of its vast capacities to do whatever it can? So, I don't think the marching arts necessarily were derived from this sort of just natural love for the body. But again, I think that's why we're here today, to talk about that these don't have to be two separate schools of thought. We can honor the past of the marching arts while bringing to the table this newfound wisdom and appreciation for the body, which it's not really newfound. It's just the way it's always been. We're just trying to heal this activity.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it on the head, especially with bringing in the fact that there's the rigidity that we've seen historically, and then there's this side of fluidity and just kind of letting the body be. And that's something that I point out to my students. Like, there's a time and place where I will ask, or any instructor will ask for this straight line, this set position, certain angle. And then there's a time and place for where you can explore. And it's important to find both sides of those because each has its importance in the marching arts. And then also calling back to the question, like, what is dance to you, and finding the balance between those two. For me personally, I started off more with just free expression and just doing what feels good to my body. But now with my education in muscular actions, specific muscular actions, I now see movement in a much more structured way where I can say, hey, like, I want you to think of this muscle doing this motion with your body. I want you to feel this muscle when you do this. And if that doesn't work with that student, then I switch to like, okay, I want you to think of this more gray area, like this more gray conceptual type thing, like, because no two people respond to the same thing. So it's important to find both, and each side has its importance, and it's just a matter of incorporating both and finding the importance in both.
I love that we're kind of deconstructing this idea that dance is just a physical thing, that the mental capacity of dance and movement and how you approach beginning to move significantly shapes the way that you're dancing. I've thought a lot what you just said, Kelly, about mirror neurons. So even if I'm watching a choreography or I'm watching a drum corps show, my brain is reacting in a mimetic way that's giving my brain a way to understand the way that that person or people are moving, and appreciating that movement as felt, not necessarily physically felt in my body, but in a way that I can kind of, if I could walk out and kind of replicate the movement because I've seen it in my mind's eye. So there's a kind of preparation that goes into dance where you don't have to necessarily be completely in a mindful space to dance or move intensely, but definitely there is a huge mental aspect to dance and movement, just even starting with the more passive way of engaging with dance, just watching it and then actually moving yourself. I mean, I'm sure you all relate, but the first time you learn a sequence, it's just absolute chaos. And then sometimes you sleep on it and it's just ready, like it's just there. And sometimes in certain sequences, it never sticks. Other times you have it at the end of the class and the movement. So there's this huge range of variabilities in what our bodies can do because every body is different. But yeah, I think that way of deconstructing the way of thinking about dance as just a physical thing or just a mental rehearsal thing and kind of moving the two together, I really like that. I love that this conversation's going in that direction.
Yeah, me too. I think it's gonna be fascinating to go into this conversation a little bit deeper with the overall understanding that there's a certain magic to the body and there's a certain like importance to just letting the body be and observing it, while also understanding that we can increase our awareness with this more codified knowledge, with this like detailed anatomical knowledge, and that we just have to be careful to not let those details get in the way of the ultimate goal, which I think is to create expression, or which is to share with others, to share with oneself, to return to our bodies. So yeah, I think I'm going to stop talking there because I have nothing else to add, period.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, what I always come back to, especially with my students, is that bodily awareness. And like you said, Sarah, that kind of mirroring what you see. And that, I mean, when you're in a dance studio, you have those mirrors. So it's easier to say, okay, this is what they did. This is how it looks on my body. But when you're in the marching arts, you're like just trying to mirror them without a mirror in front of you. So calling on that body awareness, how it feels on your body, and then trying to recreate that every single time is really important when you apply those skills. And those are skills that can be applied when you're doing a simple 8 to 5 too, because you ideally want to mirror the person with phenomenal technique, just like you want to mirror your dance instructor doing it across the floor. The skills translate between dance and marching. They don't need to be two separate things. It's just utilizing it in a similar, just not same setting.
Oh yeah, the alignment between dance pedagogy and marching arts pedagogy, sometimes I really feel the only thing that's changed is the situation, the learning environment, whether you're on a football field or surrounded by dancers that are very close to you in a floor to wall mirror situation where you can see yourself. And anyone who has been through a marching arts season knows that one of the most startling parts of your season is getting to see yourself perform for the first time, because sometimes that's the very first time that you see how others are watching you and seeing you, and you can kind of anticipate and make little corrections when you see yourself that way, because then you learn the skill of, okay, this is how I copy, and this is what I think I am approximating what I think this might look like. And then you get to actually see yourself do it. Whereas in a dance class, that happens more in real time. So I think the body awareness just tacitly in the marching arts pedagogy of making a bunch of different and new and exciting kinds of mistakes in the pursuit of being unified and being synchronous in our movement is a huge asset for anyone that wants to continue to dance and move beyond just playing in the horn line, moving in the battery. Yeah.
So moving forward from here, I feel like we can go in a lot of different ways. I feel like on one hand, we can talk about just bodily awareness in general, just like the general kinds of skills it takes to mirror someone who's demonstrating choreography, general skills that you would need to be successful in any movement environment, whether it's on the marching field or in a dance studio. I feel like we could also talk more specifically about awareness of different styles of movement techniques, or different styles of dance, whether we talk through them and show through them, or whether we actually show examples. We can even talk about mindfulness and awareness for that matter, because I feel like all these concepts are all related. And so I'm curious where we now move this conversation, what content we jump into, or maybe I guess in the next session, since we're about to wrap this one up. You'll find out soon.
No, it's totally good. I think it's a great question. I wonder if Kellie has thoughts.
I mean, I can provide just like a quick little spiel on just kind of mindfulness and mindfulness in the body. That way we can maybe transition and how that can apply to different styles, so we can use it as a good segue into looking at specific types of dance. But as I mentioned previously, like when I talk to my students, I always point out their mindfulness, or how their energy is, or where their energy is going. And a lot of that comes through with how you prepare yourself for what you're going to do. And I mean, as any performer has their own individual sense of what it means to them to perform, what it takes for them to perform. You have to key into that and key into how it feels using that performance energy for you. And that has to be a part of your mindfulness. And that has to play into like, okay, so when we were doing this is how it felt on me at X, Y, and Z on this day. And then I wanted to feel like that when I'm performing. And a lot of that is just keying into what your body is doing, keying into how you're feeling, just being, we say this word a lot, aware, just general awareness. And a lot of that comes into breathing, how you set yourself up for success, how you just get ready for whatever you're about to do. That's kind of my big thing, is just where your body is, how you think your body's moving, and how it feels to you. And that can go in with the smooth and with the sharp motions.
Yeah, I think the way I think about it, honestly, that mindfulness is just another term for loving awareness. And so essentially what we're looking at is trying to establish a loving awareness of the choreography given to us, an awareness of what's going on, what they're doing on a motion by motion basis, but an awareness of what is ultimately trying to be expressed over the course of this phrase, over this entire piece, in this style, this genre of dance. Moreover, we're trying to develop a loving awareness of our own body. We're trying to understand our body a little bit more. And sometimes that understanding is just understanding where we're at right now, our limitations or our current range of motion, our current abilities, while understanding that a lot of those ranges of motion can be increased as we continue to bring our awareness to the desire to increase that range of motion. I digress. I think the idea of having a loving awareness being sort of like your guiding view, the lens through which we view all this dance in the next segment, I think is going to be very helpful for you getting the most out of this.
Absolutely. I love that frame. I think that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. So yeah, we covered a lot of ground just in this first session, and I feel like there's still more to say, but in the second section, we're going to offer some piece presentations and reflections and analysis on ways of thinking about dance, ways of thinking about loving awareness and the ways that our bodies move and what dance can be. So we hope you enjoy it. We'll see you soon.